Readers who do not understand the scene in which Hagbard abdicates in favour of Miss Portinari should take heart. Once they do understand it, they will understand most of the mysteries of all schools of mysticism. Appendix Cheth, Hagbard's Booklet. After prolonged pleading and vehement prayers of entreaty, the authors finally prevailed upon Hagbard Chelene to allow us to quote some further illuminating passages from his booklet, Never Whistle While You're Pissing. Before we made these frantic efforts, he wanted us to publish the whole thing. The title, he informs us, is taken from R.H. Blythe's Zen in English Literature and Oriental Classics. The story is instructive. Blythe, studying Zazen, sitting Zen or dhyana meditation, in a monastery at Kyoto, asked the Roshi, Zen master, if there was any further discipline he should adopt to accelerate his progress. The Roshi replied concisely, "Never whistle while you're pissing." C.F. Gurdjieff's endless diatribes about concentration, the Raja in Huxley's Island who unleashed talking myna birds to remind his citizens constantly, "Here and now, boys, here and now," and Jesus, "Whatever thy hand findest to do, do it with all thy heart." Here, then, are some of the keys to the strange head of Hagbard Chelene. I once overheard two botanists arguing over a damned thing that had blasphemously sprouted in a college yard. One claimed that the damned thing was a tree, and the other claimed that it was a shrub. They each had good scholarly arguments, and they were still debating when I left them. The world is forever spawning damned things, things that are neither tree nor shrub, fish nor fowl, black nor white. And the categorical thinker can only regard the spiky and buzzing world of sensory fact as a profound insult to his card index system of classifications. The whole history of science is the odyssey of a pixelated card indexer perpetually sailing between such damned things and desperately juggling its classifications to fit them in, just as the history of politics is the futile epic of a long series of attempts to line up the damned things and cajole them to march in regiment. Every ideology is a mental murder, a reduction of dynamic living processes to static classifications, and every classification is a damnation, just as every inclusion is an exclusion. In a busy, buzzing universe, where no two snowflakes are identical, and no two trees are identical, and no two people are identical, and indeed the smallest subatomic particle, we are assured, is not even identical with itself from one microsecond to the next, every card index system is a self-delusion. Or to put it more charitably, as Nietzsche says, we are all better artists than we realize. It is easy to see that the label Jew was a damnation in Nazi Germany, but actually the label Jew is a damnation anywhere, even where anti-Semitism does not exist. He is a Jew, he is a doctor, and he is a poet mean to the card indexing centre of the cortex that my experience with him will be like my experience with other Jews, other doctors, and other poets. Thus, individuality is ignored when identity is asserted. At a party or any place where strangers meet, watch this mechanism in action. Behind the friendly overtures, there is wariness as each person fishes for the label that will identify and damn the other. Finally, it is revealed, oh, he's an advertising copywriter. Oh, he's an engine lathe operator. Both parties relax, for now they know how to behave, what roles to play in the game. 99% of each has been damned. The other is reacting to the 1% that has been labelled by the card index machine. Human society can be structured either according to the principle of authority or according to the principle of liberty. Authority is a static social configuration in which people act as superiors and inferiors, a sadomasochistic relationship. Liberty is a dynamic social configuration in which people act as equals, an erotic relationship. In every interaction between people, either authority or liberty is the dominant factor. Families, churches, lodges, clubs and corporations are either more authoritarian than libertarian or more libertarian than authoritarian. It becomes obvious as we proceed that the most pugnacious and intolerant form of authority is the state, which even today dares to assume an absolutism which the Church itself has long ago surrendered, and to enforce obedience with the techniques of the Church's old and shameful Inquisition. Every form of authoritarianism is, however, a small state, even if it has a membership of only 2. Freud's remark to the effect that the delusion of one man is neurosis and the delusion of many men is religion can be generalized. The authoritarianism of one man is crime, and the authoritarianism of many men is the state. Benjamin Tucker wrote quite accurately, "Aggression is simply another name for government. Aggression, invasion, government are interchangeable terms. The essence of government is control, or the attempt to control. He who attempts to control another is a governor, an aggressor, an invader, and the nature of such invasion is not changed, whether it be made by one man upon another man, after the manner of the ordinary criminal, or by one man upon all other men, after the manner of an absolute monarch, or by all other men upon one man, after the manner of a modern democracy." Tucker's use of the word invasion is remarkably precise, considering that he wrote more than 50 years before the basic discoveries of ethology. Every act of authority is, in fact, an invasion of the psychic and physical territory of another. Every fact of science was once damned. Every invention was considered impossible. Every discovery was a nervous shock to some orthodoxy. Every artistic innovation was denounced as fraud and folly. The entire web of culture and progress, everything on earth that is man-made and not given to us by nature, is the concrete manifestation of some man's refusal to bow to authority. We would own no more, know no more, and be no more than the first ape-like hominids if it were not for the rebellious, the recalcitrant, and the intransigent. As Oscar Wilde truly said, disobedience was man's original virtue. The human brain, which loves to read descriptions of itself as the universe's most marvellous organ of perception, is an even more marvellous organ of rejection. The naked facts of our economic game are easily discoverable and undeniable once stated, but conservatives, who are usually individuals who profit every day of their lives from these facts, manage to remain oblivious to them, or to see them through a very rosy-tinted and distorting lens. Similarly, the revolutionary ignores the total testimony of history about the natural course of revolution, through violence to chaos and back to the starting point. We must remember that thought is abstraction. In Einstein's metaphor, the relationship between a physical fact and our mental reception of that fact is not like the relationship between beef and beef broth, a simple matter of extraction and condensation. Rather, as Einstein goes on, it is like the relationship between our overcoat and the ticket given us when we check our overcoat. In other words, human perception involves coding even more than crude sensing. The mesh of language or of mathematics or of a school of art or of any system of human abstracting gives to our mental constructs the structure not of the original fact but of the symbol system into which it is coded, just as a map maker colours a nation purple not because it is purple but because his code demands it. But every code excludes certain things, blurs other things, and overemphasises still other things. All authority is a function of coding, of game rules. Men have arisen again and again armed with pitchforks to fight armies with cannon. Men have also submitted docilely to the weakest and most tottery oppressors. It all depends on the extent to which coding distorts perception and conditions the physical and mental reflexes. It seems at first glance that authority could not exist at all if all men were cowards, or if no men were cowards, but flourishes as it does only because most men are cowards and some men are thieves. Actually, the inner dynamics of cowardice and submission on the one hand, and of heroism and rebellion on the other, are seldom consciously realized either by the ruling class or the servile class. Submission is identified not with cowardice but with virtue, rebellion not with heroism but with evil. To the Roman slave owners, Spartacus was not a hero, and the obedient slaves were not cowards. Spartacus was a villain, and the obedient slaves were virtuous. The obedient slaves believed this also. The obedient always think of themselves as virtuous rather than cowardly. If authority implies submission, liberation implies equality. Authority exists when one man obeys another, and liberty exists when men do not obey other men. Thus, to say that authority exists is to say that class and caste exist, that submission and inequality exist. To say that liberty exists is to say that classlessness exists. Authority, by dividing men into classes, creates dichotomy, disruption, hostility, fear, disunion. Liberty, by placing men on an equal footing, creates association, amalgamation, union, security. When the relationships between men are based on authority and coercion, they are driven apart. When based on liberty and non-aggression, they are drawn together. These facts are self-evident and axiomatic. If authoritarianism did not possess the inbuilt pre-programmed double-bind structure of a game without end, men would long ago have rejected it and embraced libertarianism. The mechanism by which authority and submission are implanted in the human mind is coding of perception. That which fits into the code is accepted, all else is damned. It is damned to being ignored, brushed aside, unnoticed, and if these fail, it is damned to being forgotten. A monopoly on the means of communication may define a ruling elite more precisely than the celebrated Marxian formula of monopoly on the means of production. Since man extends his nervous system through channels of communication like the written word, the telephone, radio, etc., he who controls these media controls part of the nervous system of every member of society. The contents of these media become part of the contents of every individual's brain. Thus, in pre-literate societies, taboos on the spoken word are more numerous and more draconic than at any more complex level of social organization. With the invention of written speech, hieroglyphic, ideographic, or alphabetical, the taboos are shifted to this medium. There is less concern with what people say and more concern with what they write. Some of the first societies to achieve literacy, such as Egypt and the Mayan culture of ancient Mexico, evidently kept a knowledge of their hieroglyphs a religious secret, which only the higher orders of the priestly and royal families were allowed to share. The same process repeats endlessly. Each step forward in the technology of communication is more heavily tabooed than the earlier steps. Thus, in America today, post-Lenny Bruce, one seldom hears of convictions for spoken blasphemy or obscenity. Prosecution of books still continues, but higher courts increasingly interpret the laws in a liberal fashion, and most writers feel fairly confident that they can publish virtually anything. Movies are growing almost as desacralized as books, although the fight is still heated in this area. Television, the newest medium, remains encased in Neolithic taboo. When a more efficient medium arrives, the taboos on television will decrease.